finished my last panel, and this is the type of brush I used to put the tipping on with. Now, with tipping, what you also can do is you can use a RIT dye, liquid, and mix it with water and use that. Now, the color I used on this was that aniline tipping. It wasn't a dark brown, it was called pastel, but it's available in different shades. You know, if this was a coyote, I might use a gray. You could use a gray RIT and mix it lightly until you get the right consistency. So we're gonna let this dry. After this is dried, we'll take it off the board and then we're gonna join them up. On my blanket, I'm going to be adding foxtails. Tails are detachable. I use what's called a tassel cap. I get these on Amazon. They come in different colors. There's gold, nickel. This is kind of like a gunmetal, black metal color. The tassel cap has a small hole. You can see it right here that this set screw goes into. This one is done. The set screw has a Phillips head, which is probably kind of hard to see, and you need a really tiny screwdriver. I got this one from like a watch kit, but honestly, it takes just a really tiny screwdriver. So what I do is I take my foxtail. This one I've dry fit, so I know it works. I trim off the inside of the tail just a little bit where it's crunchy, cut the top so it's square, and then what I do is I trim the hair down about a good 1/2 inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch, so that tassel cap will sit on there nicely. After I've got that done, you want to put the tassel cap on, see how it fits. If it's good to go, then you put I put a glob of super glue on the inside, push that together, then around the outside edge, I do super glue all the way around the outside edge, push this tassel cap back on, twist it so I know it's got a good seal. After it's dry, what I do is I take a safety pin and the pointy end I stick in that hole and I jab it in there a couple times so I know my set screw will be able to screw down into that hole. So the set screw is tiny. It helps hold the tassel cap on, but this should work good. I'm going to also use a detachable lobster claw on my blanket so that these will be able to be put on and taken off. I'll probably take this jump ring off, but yeah, we'll see how she likes it. I've got 17 left to do. So I have my 3 sections put together, and my table is about 8 feet long, so this is pretty good size. I've got it folded back over on itself, but you can see how good size this is. And what I'm going to do next is put the Weft cloth on the back side. So I did put a felt in each center where I joined the necks up. What that does is it helps keep that center seam from spreading. So it's just a thin piece of like dime store felt, and you just sew it additionally in that already joined edge. And yeah, it's really pretty. So when they lay this on the bed, they'll be able to do it 2 different directions. They'll be able to lay it acrosswise and lengthwise. So it'll be pretty. This is another view of it folded in half, the opposite direction. So it's big. When I attach this weft cloth, I do it at like every spot that I pinned real close to it. I loosen the tension on my machine up here, loosen my tension, and I also lengthen my stitch quite a bit. So when I sew this, I sew it like on a leather or on a seam that's already there, and you can see this wide stitch. When you go and run your fingernail over it, it flattens. It's still holding, but there's no ridge there, so it's not going to cause any puckers. And I start at the one end. I have this rolled up like a burrito in my lap, and I start at the one end and just continue to go down to the next pin, the next pin, the next pin, and then kind of roll it back again the opposite way on itself as I go. So this is basically what that stitch looks like. I've got this right on the leather, and I'm going to do this one-handed, but it's just a long, narrow, and if I do it like 2 inches, that's far enough. Pop your stitch closed, and then here is what you've got. So this works good. It holds this weft cloth on here perfectly, and I like this weft fabric because you can see right through it. So here's my leather, there's my joining seam, and I'm sewing it right on that joining seam. If I didn't want to sew it on the joining seam, I could sew it right in the middle of this piece of leather. So wherever you do it, you can see right through the cloth, and it's good. But I do it probably about 1.5 inches to 2 inches in length, and that is going to hold this very good. I'm using a quilted nylon fabric for the backing on my Fox blanket. I like it because it has just a nice amount of cush in this backing, and it's lightweight. It comes in a 5-yard cut. I buy this at Wawak sewing supplies. It comes in, I think, brown, black, and maybe navy. It's a 2-inch square, so it's not real huge. I used to be able to get it in 1 inch. For some reason, they don't make it anymore. So to prep this, I pressed it. I also cut it and seamed it on the one side that I need to, so it's going to be long enough for me. And then I pressed one edge back about 2 inches, and the other long edge on the end, I also pressed that back. I'm going to sew the long edge first by fur machine to the one edge of my blanket, and then I'm going to sew this edge next. I'll turn the blanket back on itself and then I'll determine where my next edge will be. So this, it's lightweight. It doesn't add any weight hardly whatsoever to the blanket. And if somebody spills something on this, it's kind of water repellent in a way. And it's easy to just, wipe off and clean. It doesn't show the dirt. So, it's a pretty good deal. And it's not very expensive. I think this whole cut maybe cost, $30. So $5 or $6 a yard. Not bad. So I'm attaching the liner to my Fox body. And what I did was, I've got that weft cloth. I've got the suede edging. On the outside edge, I trimmed it down to about maybe 1/2 inch width. And it does have cold tape on it, so it doesn't stretch. And then I've got my lining. So it's just simply sewing and catching all three at the same time. And there I jumped the gun, but you can see what's going on. So here, I started at the corner, and I don't like to catch the corners, but about 2 inches, 3 inches past the corner, that's where, you know, I started catching that weft, the suede, and the blanket. So I'm sewing this, and I'm using a 14 needle brown fur machine thread. And what I'm doing is I'm catching the lining, the suede edging, and it does have cold tape on it to keep it from stretching. And I'm also catching that weft fabric that I have on the edge. I've got this pinned loosely the length, and so when I'm sewing, I just don't have a lot of room here because I moved my machine. I might have to change that, but it's joins up, you know, real well. And you just, if I think this weft is a little too tight in some spots, you know, I just nip it, slip it. So otherwise, because I've got it tacked in these spots going along the outside edge, it's pretty good. And you can see it's joining up real smooth. I've got one side done. This is the long side, so 2 sides to go, but I'm gonna finish this up and then we'll put it back on the table and see how it looks. So yeah, I'll release this pin because this is holding it too much before I start to sew again, and that's fine because I just kind of loosely pinned it on there. And got to tuck my hair down in because this ends up being the one end that the rumps were on, so the rumps are kind of long here there. And I probably could have done a little better job of trimming that suede. I had a couple bumps there, but it's pretty good. I was able to stitch just about the whole blanket by fur machine, and the lining to it, I left an opening on the one end of about, I suppose maybe about 2 feet, and I put a piece of satin binding on that matches fairly well, and I'm going to close this edge up by hand. And the rest of the blanket, it looks good. You know, I pinned it, patted it out, marked the edge, and just like I did my other Red Fox blanket that I have a video of, and, you know, turned it like a burrito, and it sewed really well. So what I'm going to do now is I've got this edge pinned all the way around, and I can feel that where the suede finished right there. So I left a little bit of an edge of the lining, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to hand tack this all the way around, kind of catching right where that edge is. And after I've got that done, then what I do is I come in on that leather strip. It's perfect place. I can feel them. There's 9 strips, so I'm gonna like quilt down through the batting, catching that weft cloth that's attached to the leather strip, and should finish really nice. And then I have to put my tail attachment things onto the edges, so it's going to be a little bit of hand sewing, but I think it'll work good. It lays lovely. So Yeah, it's nice.